fast approaching the first 100-day mark of the second Donald Trump presidency, milestone that is often seen as something of a report card for any administration. Well, Time magazine had the first sit-down interview that President Trump granted to media for a look back at his record since being sworn in. Well, the man who carried out that interview is Time magazine's senior political correspondent, Cortellessa. Great to have you in the studio with us, Eric. A really fascinating read. I'm sure it was really interesting to have that sit down. I mean, we were just saying there that first 100 days often seen as that report card for any administration. How does the president himself feel that it's been going?
Well, at least rhetorically, he feels very good about it. I mean, he pitched it as an unbridled success. He said he's done everything that he campaigned on. And, you know, that much is true. He has embarked on a mass deportation operation. He has imposed sweeping tariffs across the globe. He has cracked down on diversity hiring in the federal government. And other things, but he's also facing some setbacks and challenges, right? He is currently engaged in fights with the courts. He is attempting to seize power from Congress on trade and appropriations. He is also using the levers of governmental power to weaken private institutions like law firms and universities. It's all part of a systematic, coordinated effort to consolidate power inside of his office. And, you know, the big question is just how much the rest of the country and civil society will let him.
When it comes to that question of tariffs, for example, so much uncertainty, particularly regarding, is this a negotiating tactic? Is he in it for the long haul? What sense did you get?
Well, you know, when I asked President Trump if we still have high tariffs, as high as 20, 30, 50% on foreign imports a year right now, would you consider that a success? And he said, total victory, which leads me to think that he is willing to maintain high tariffs on specific countries if they're not willing to meet him where he would like them to. I think he's taking this as kind of a case-by-case approach. He didn't actually use this analogy with me in the interview, but he has in other conversations. He's talked about it as a tailor-made suit for each country. So that's where these sort of reciprocal tariffs come in, which he lifted when the bond market was showing extreme signs of stress on April 9th. We were on the cusp of a potential major financial crisis, way worse than anything than the plummeting stock market showed, and that's when Donald Trump decided to pull back. But right now, he's sort of giving countries the opportunity to either meet him where he wants, to come to some sort of a deal, or he's willing to let tariffs stay on them indefinitely.
The other big topic, I think it's fair to say, in these first 100 days has been immigration. We've had that ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court, particularly when it comes to the Salvadoran man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, saying that the administration must facilitate his return. Did you get a clearer sense about whether the president would respect that decision ultimately? I
think he's not going to. I mean, you know, when I posed this to President Trump, he said his lawyers told him that the ruling did not actually ask him to bring Abrego Garcia back. I then read from him the ruling, which said that the order requires you to facilitate the return of this man from El Salvador. And I said, are you facilitating? He said, no. And a very telling moment was that, have you asked President Bukele of El Salvador? He says, I haven't asked him. No one asked me to ask him except for you. And he kept reverting to his lawyers, saying, my lawyers tell me this, my lawyers tell me that. I leave it to my lawyers, which makes me think that a lawyer told him to give that answer whenever he was asked about the subject. Yeah,
a really interesting moment and exchange there in that interview. I think people around the world who've been looking at these headline-grabbing moments, whether it is President Trump saying that the U.S. will get Gaza, territorial ambitions for Greenland, for example. Some people have been asking the question whether he is serious about that. Were you able to ascertain any more?
Well, I think he sounds like he's serious. He seems like he's serious. He says he's serious. Ultimately, time will tell whether he's willing to do what is really, really hard and could have some really calamitous consequences, potentially calamitous consequences. You know, are you willing to go to war with all of Scandinavia? Are you willing to have a conflict with our oldest neighbor of 200 years, Canada? They were with us on the beaches of Normandy. They were with us after September 11th. You know, we'll find out. But when I asked him, do you want to be remembered as a president who expanded American territory, he said, I wouldn't mind. And I think this is someone who really sees part of his role, and he admires James Polk for doing this, who was the champion of Manifest Destiny. Trump sees himself as someone who can grow American empire.
And I do have to say, I mean, this isn't the first time I've read one of your interviews with President Trump. You've sat down with him before. In terms of Donald Trump, the man, did you remark any kind of evolution, perhaps, any way that he's changed?
Well, I would say, the last couple times that I spoke with him, one was a year ago in April, another was in November, those were triumphant moments for President Trump. He was, at the first time, he's coasting towards victory, was better positioned to beat Joe Biden at that point than he was ever positioned to beat Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden in 16 or 20, respectively. November, he had just won the election. Me and some colleagues had interviewed him for Person of the Year. This time, he's up against the wall. He is under siege. He is challenged with the limitations of government. He's facing the fact that a number of campaign promises have not come to fruition yet, like solving the Russia-Ukraine war very, very quickly. Originally, he said 24 hours. Now he says that was said in jest. So I think, Donald Trump was more cantankerous. He was more evasive. And I think that's because he's in a very different situation right now after 100 days of his presidency than he was during those really just high-floating moments of the campaign.
Yeah, really fascinating insights there. Eric Cortellessa, Times senior political correspondent. Thank you so much for sharing them with us.
Thank you.
In the past hour, President Trump arrived in Rome ahead of Pope Francis's funeral at the Vatican. It is his first overseas trip since returning to the White House in January. And just